Like that?
Things I actually can control. Not reality.
Let me play my part.
Like, is that real? Did that happen? Like,
The structure of your brain actually changes.
do you still feel that every day?
And then it got time for guitars.
Eating disorder, like
I didn't want to die,
tendencies.
but I didn't want to live either.
Helpless little girl.
You gotta go in the hospital.
You feel powerless because
The body has a fear reaction.
The opportunity to empower.
No one can take away my power.
I won't take myself out.
Artists that are true like that, those are the ones that tend to
Like a sin.
create change.
But I had no idea until we'd been together a couple weeks that this is a person fighting for their life. And then I didn't know that people died of an eating disorder until we got to IDP.
Yeah.
Which for people listening is intensive day program. It's a partial hospitalization.
Right.
And when I say I didn't know that people died of this, I was sitting in the lobby and there was a little booklet and I'm flipping through it and it's like, I'll always, be with you. I'll always remember you. And then I look up and Kel walks by and I go, Kel, are these girls dead? And she looked me in the eyes and nodded. Mm-hmm. And that's when I realized this person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with is fighting for her life.
Right.
That's how long it took me to get it.
Yeah.
So I wonder in the 90s if anyone got it.
Well, I know that through our talking, I had a vague memory come up. There used to be this workbook called The Courage to Heal about sexual abuse and sexual assault and surviving that.
Uh-huh.
I will tell you they did not do a very good job.
What time period are we talking about? I'm not ripping this
is
author, by the
93.
way.
No,
We're just talking about the
absolutely,
evolution.
absolutely. No, I'm not.
Everything's
I'm
gonna
not.
get
I'm
better over
not. I
time?
don't. Let me clarify. I don't mean the book was bad.
Okay.
I mean the approach that was used with the book wasn't so well. Like, I don't think people were that knowledgeable yet.
Of course.
Yes. So it's not to their, like, they were doing it on purpose. It was just, you don't know what you don't know. So that would trigger a lot of the flashbacks for Kelly, I feel like.
Okay, so I don't have any context for this. Courage to Heal, start me up from the beginning.
It's just a workbook that you go through, and it's there's a book with it. I don't remember ever seeing the book, but I remember now a flash of the cover came into my mind, and then I've seen it over my years of working. Mm-hmm. Like, it's been like older something, somebody left somewhere or whatever. But it's a workbook where people go through and they answer questions about various aspects of things or about sexual assault.
Is it like a serious version of This Is Your Life, Guy Smiley?
I don't know that one.
That's Sesame Street.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
She said, I don't know that one. This Is Your Life, Guy Smiley, and it goes back through their life.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's like, it's a historical retelling.
Basically, yes.
Fun times.
Uh-huh.
Jesus, I can't imagine her getting through that in one piece.
No wonder she never wanted to eat. Because now I'm sober, and now the only thing I can control is not eating.
People say control a lot when they talk about their eating disorders.
Yeah.
I'm sympathetic to it. I'm trying to understand it, but I don't relate to it. I've lost appetite before. I was thin when she died.
Yeah.
But even through that hell, over time, I started to eat again. Mm-hmm. And now I'm just like your average kind of slovenly American whose workout routine is mostly YouTube. But that doesn't mean I'm happier.
No.
It's just that it doesn't go that direction for me.
Yeah.
So I'm trying so hard to understand when people say I felt control when I restricted my eating.
So
what does that mean?
Addiction in general, there's been proof provided that, the structure of your brain actually changes. Like, it's sort of wired differently now. Like, neurons fire a different path than they did before once you cross sort of that threshold and become addicted, right?
Okay.
Eating disorder is an addiction. All kinds of things can be an addiction. So in eating, it depends on what way you want to look at it, if you want to look at it as a medical issue or not, right? Because there's always that debate of medical, not medical, whatever.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. When you become addicted to something, you transition from, general everyday, like, oh, I can, things I actually can control, right? Like, if the speed limit says 55, I can go that or I can go 60, right? Like, I get to choose that, right? Like, I can control that behavior, right? Whereas when you now cross over to being an addict or having an addiction in some form, you focus and you fixate and you obsess on controlling the very thing you can't, right? And then you feel powerless because you can't actually control it. So then you grasp at straws to find ways to control. And it gets distorted. It's like a lens you look through. It's like glasses you put on, and now you see the world through this way, and it's not necessarily reality.
It's not accurate.
Right. But your reality is what you make it. So the lens you're looking through, you feel is real.
It's as real to you.
Mm-hmm.
Kel said that, she said, I was on such crazy shit when I was a teenager that when I got sober, that felt trippy to me.
Uh-huh.
Being on drugs was
weird.
my normal, and then
Right.
sobriety was like, what is this?
Right.
Like, I can't, I'm trying so hard to understand that normal, obviously, mainly when she said that, it terrified me. I was like, what the fuck did you do to yourself?
Right.
Horrified me.
Right.
It's different being a wife than just being a friend.
For sure.
But she wasn't anywhere near any of that stuff. When
Right.
we were together, I'm laughing about me having to be the one running this major, like, dope ring to try to get her weed while she was literally dying.
Yeah, right.
She had tumors in her spine.
Yeah.
She had tumors in her bones. There's no pain like it. And all my little, whatever went out the window. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but Kel, I'm going to find you the marijuana.
Right.
And she made this face. She couldn't laugh at me like you are right now.
Right.
She made this face. She just held it in. And I was like, no, I'm going to find it. Come back to her 2 days later, Kel, I'm the only one who didn't have any. And she's like, yeah, I didn't want to say. I didn't want to tell you. You were so serious. I said, Kel, I've been practicing. If I get pulled over, no matter what, if speeding, whatever, I'm just going to say, I don't have any drugs. And I think that sounds convincing to me. And she's shaking her head.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, this is horrible.
No.
I said, I'm going to start speaking in code with people. I'd text a friend, the worms are in the garden. And they'd be like, I don't know what that means, but I'm coming over with some weed. I'd be like, the worms are in the garden. And she was just, I'll tell you what, we had some fucking laughs.
I am sure you did.
Can you picture her married to me?
I'm sure it was amazing. I have no doubt.
We had some laughs.
I have no doubt.
Okay, so the control piece.
Yeah.
Is it so? It's a piece of feeling completely out of control, which I can definitely see that coming from trauma. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about human anatomy for a second. So the human stomach, I've been learning, houses a lot of the hormones that give us a sense of well-being. Mm-hmm. I always think psychology neck up, right? I think of it as taking place in the brain, but there's
We have a vagus
neurotransmitters
nerve.
all
Mm-hmm.
over the body. Mm-hmm. There's neurotransmitters in the heart. Are there in the stomach neurotransmitters?
That I don't know, but we have our vagus nerve that's connected from our stomach to our head, which is linked to depression and all kinds of different stuff.
Well, that just answered about 8,000 questions for me.
Yeah.
Why people restrict eating, and so much of your mood is to do with food.
Mm-hmm.
You just got the job, let's celebrate, let's go have a steak.
Yep.
Just like, and it can be casual and sweet like that.
Right.
Or it can be like, the
Well,
other
and
darker
also,
side.
right, culture or community and different cultures dictate food is a place where you share. Food is a place where you show you care,
Oh, yeah.
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 And then you have that on top of it, and then that gets confusing for somebody who has disordered eating.
I made her mashed potatoes one time, and I'm good with mashed potatoes. I do okay in the kitchen. I have my moments. Sometimes. But I was like, Kel, we're having comfort food tonight. Check this out. And I had the spuds going. I had like half a stick of butter, like the
Right.
whole thing. And
Yeah.
she looks at me and goes, what the fuck is comfort food?
Yeah.
Like she would never put those two words together.
Right.
And my heart kind of sank, and I was
Yeah.
like, it's food that makes you feel good. And I might as well have been speaking Greek.
Right.
My heart just breaks. Like, she has a journal entry that says, what is the next reality? Where will we step our feet? Where will we lay our heads? I hope we don't have to eat. Like, if that's her impression of heaven, just one day I won't have to eat anymore.
Right.
That's that we still toast that way. When I have a meal with my family, we all raise a glass and we say no more food. And that's how we honor her.
Yeah. Wow.
It's heart-wrenching for me to think that, like, a s'more, a
I know.
burger, anything. Did she ever?
I love s'mores.
Did
How
she?
could you do that?
Like, just a
I know.
ridiculous, like, funny food from your childhood or anything? Like, could she ever enjoy it? I don't know.
Like ever, right?
I don't know. When we were we went to Vegas when we first got together. I had it booked, and I didn't want to spend any time away from her. So I was like, well, now that we're together, you're going to Las Vegas because it's already booked. And she's like, okay. And so she booked a flight and came with, and we went with my younger sister also. And the three of us were like the three musketeers. Our whole 3 years together, we were the three musketeers. And I'm a lightweight. I go to sleep early.
Yeah.
Cal's the opposite, right? Musician,
Right.
the whole
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And so I'm like, well, that was an exciting day, but it's after 9 and I'm out. And she's just rolling her eyes. And she and my sister, she goes, drinks are too expensive around here. I'm going to make a quick run to the store. I'll come back, and then you and I will hang out, saying to my sister,
Yeah.
right? And the way the story goes, I didn't know this till after she passed because the stories come out more and more. And I just, some night that I went to sleep early and didn't know what happened and whatever. I guess it turns out she came back with vodka and pixie sticks. She goes, I got us all set for the night. Slams them on the counter in the hotel room, vodka and just sugar in a tube.
Oh my.
I like to think that she maybe had some enjoyment. I know that there's people, nutritionists must be like, okay, that's not a meal. But, semantics.
Right. I mean, we all need to look at each individual person and what they're capable of and what they need.
So speaking of
Pixie
capable of,
sticks.
yeah, exactly, vodka and pixie sticks. So that's what the disorder looked like for her. I just don't know if in her lifetime she enjoyed a bite of food.
Yeah.
And now you talked about that vagus nerve.
Yeah.
So we were going to get into this link between the stomach and our moods and everything, and how we choose to cope, and that goes back up into the head and the neurotransmitters and those pathways, right?
Right.
Like when I'm upset, I reach for her. I can't reach. So I'm reaching for whatever, this mic or whatever I can do to try to feel like I'm speaking for her.
Yeah.
And I think I try to imagine over time the roads are rebuilding in my brain, but they always lead to her some way or another.
Yeah.
It's just how I'm wired.
Well,
So
do you recognize that you've experienced trauma?
people say it to me. I don't want to go around. I have such an easy time feeling sorry for myself with what I've been through.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of people who would have the guts to push back on me. Being widowed at 35.
Yeah.
Who would say, see, feeling sorry for yourself won't get this podcast done. It won't get this foundation known. It won't get her name known around the world. A lot of people have it bad. What are you going to get up and do? No one will ever say that to me. Because I could easily just say, have you seen cancer? Mm-hmm. You know, I know the fucking millimeters of every tumor in her body.
Right.
I could shut up anyone in a second, and that doesn't help me.
Yeah.
That keeps people from calling me out on my laziness. You know, I feel like this podcast could be up by now. It could be up by January.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
But but you know,
I'm just really like not that productive compared to my hopes and dreams for her.
But now you have an understanding of what it's like to experience trauma.
I want to understand it for other people, but I want to be hard on myself.
It isn't about being lazy. That's what everybody does, right? It's okay if it's you, but it's not okay if it's me.
Well, but why can't we be compassionate towards others and then tough on ourselves? I said that to Kel. I said,
Yeah.
I was mad, not mad at her, at the situation. We were in the hospital one day. We were in hospital a lot of days, the hospital for cancer, not for the eating. And I don't remember how it came up, but I looked at her and I said, I don't know if you could be in my shoes right now. I don't know what I was upset about.
Yeah.
She maybe wanted me to calm down or take a nap or go for a walk or give her some space. And I was like obsessing over, they said you have to walk this corridor 4 times a day. You didn't walk it 4 times a day for the last week. And I was like pushing and pushing and pushing her. And she might have been like, baby, you got to calm down. There's
Yeah.
only so much of this we can control.
Right.
Well, you're not going to say that to newlyweds with stage 4 cancer. I was losing my mind.
Right.
And I think I looked her in the eye and said, you know, I don't know if you could be in my shoes right now. I said, you're tough for yourself, but you're not tough to watch other people suffer. Mm-hmm. And she made a face like, did you just say I'm not tough?
Right.
And I looked at her and said, no, you're tough for yourself. You're tough for your own pain.
Yeah.
The toughest person I've ever known in my life.
Right.
But you can't watch other people suffer. I don't know what you'd be like in my shoes right now. This isn't easy, Cal.
For sure.
And
Where does tough change for you to strength? Being hard on
You said
oneself.
where?
Yeah. Being hard on oneself, right? That's what we all do. Like, we end up turning to,
some people do. I know
Punish,
tons of
you
people
know?
who have no accountability whatsoever, and
Yeah.
everything in their life is someone else's fault until the day they die. And you sit there, you know people like this, and you wonder,
Sure.
will this one ever grow up? Mm-hmm. And I just want to be the grown-up in the room, because Kel was the grown-up in the room.
There's
she
middle
could
road,
accept
yes.
everyone for who they were and for what they were capable of. She had a sense of context about people that most don't. Most people are like, this is the conduct that makes a person good, and anything below that I'm going to kind of be judgmental, and anything above that I'll kind of admire.
Sure.
And she was like, this is what this person is capable of.
Yeah.
And I love them no matter what. And there's not a lot of people out there with that level of wisdom and compassion.
So I don't know, the work that I do with people a lot of time, and I'm sort of, like, if we talk about always just treating their symptoms and not actually getting to what is going on for that person or helping them heal or repairing or, in various forms, right? The thing it always seems to go back to in my experience is shame and lack of self-trust. Like confidence or ability to feel like the decisions I make sense. Okay? And shame says, I'm a bad person. There's something morally wrong with me. Why can't I figure this out? Why can't I stop being lazy? Why can't I get this? Why can't I, whatever, right? But the antidote to those things, in my opinion, has been, through the work of this woman. I don't know if you know her or not, but I admire her dearly. Her name is Brene Brown. You heard of her?
It depends. What book did she write?
Daring to Lead, Braving the Wilderness, Shame and Vulnerability. I can't remember the name of it.
I don't think I know her.
She has some TED Talks. That's how I end up coming across her.
Oh, okay.
She's a researcher. And all she did, now she disseminates her information. But she was a social worker like me, and she's a researcher. And she researched shame. So she interviewed people over the course of, I think it was about 20 years, and all she did was interview people about shame. Okay?
Wow.
Right?
That's interesting.
Right.
Some people have very little.
Right. Have you no shame?
No, it's true. There are
Right.
people who just never really feel bad about what they've done.
True. Then we cross into a different line of interesting topics, such as, people who lack the ability to have feelings or empathy or that sort of stuff. But her antidote that she has found is in vulnerability and courage and strength, right? So we have this, our society has this interesting way of like, no pain, no gain, right?
So wait, you just said, I don't want to miss that. The antidote to shame is vulnerability
And courage.
and courage.
Yeah.
That's really powerful.
Yeah. And we live in a society that teaches us no pain, no gain, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not hard on myself, if I don't keep beating myself up on the inside, I'm never going to change. Bullshit.
Or I'll never achieve.
Right. I'm never going to
don't
do
buy
anything.
into that?
No, I don't buy into that. I have seen it go against people time and time and time and time and time again. I see how it perpetuates the cycle. I see how it doesn't allow a person to grow. I see all kinds of stuff with that. Yeah. There's this other side of it, right?
Well, where does the accountability puzzle piece fit in here? Because when I say, like, I haven't gotten done nearly the things I want to in the foundation in these last few years, just trying to hold myself accountable to what I think she deserves. And knowing that her voice already is changing lives.
For sure.
Like, why isn't it all over the world yet?
And okay, so you and I are similar in that way of like, the other piece of this is that we always feel like whatever we've done, it's not enough. Okay? But the whole thing about shame and then that courage and that vulnerability is getting to a point where you can say, I am enough. I'm doing the best I can with what I have in this moment so that I don't end up shaming myself, which perpetuates the cycle of me never changing, let's say, not getting things done, or you had mentioned lazy, or, my high expectation of where I think I should be versus like where it goes where it needs to go, right? Mm-hmm. Sort of in that dynamic of accountability isn't an external thing. Accountability is an internal dynamic, right? Holding myself accountable doesn't need to be a negative thing. It can be a loving place, right? Like, okay, let's say, your goal of, I wanted this done 3 years ago, right? Well, if you take a look at that and you say, well, I didn't get it done, what's the point of having any sort of like self-loathing or self-hatred or disgust or disdain about the behavior? What does that get you? What do you gain from that?
Right.
Nothing, in my opinion, right? But if you were to say to yourself, you know what? You're right. that isn't what you wanted, but if you continue to be on yourself about it in a negative way, you're really not going to be able to do anything different. So that's where the acceptance comes in. So I kind of transfer from accountability to this version of acceptance, where if I can accept that I didn't meet my expectation, I can go somewhere from there. I can find a new path. I can make a different change. I can make a choice. I don't have to get stuck and perpetuated by my shame.
I guess I can see where, if it's tied to productivity, being accountable and accepting, okay, I haven't achieved this yet, or this, event didn't have 300 people at it, but the people who did come said it was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about it differently than I do. I noticed after our last event, when I'd hang out with someone who was there and hear them explain it to someone else,
Yeah.
boy, did they use different words than I did.
Right?
Like, they'd say, she threw this amazing event, it was huge. And I was like, I'm just sitting there thinking, my goal for ticket sales
Right.
and what actually happened, and that's all I can see. And
Right.
everyone else is like, this is incredible.
Right.
And
And then you miss,
how do you see yourself through someone else's eyes? I don't know.
You can't. That's the thing, is you can't, right? You have to honor that that's theirs, right? And at the same time, I have, I have to honor the fact that that's not what you had hoped, right, for the turnout, let's say. But at the same time, if you're just focused on that it didn't happen the way that you had hoped, then you miss out on the experience.
Right.
It's like all that. It's sort of that the negativity takes you away. And that's the thing that shame does. Is that in one of her books, I can't remember the name of it right now. It's one of her earlier books. Something about daring, the daring way. No, that's the training program. I can't remember. I apologize. She is interviewing a person and sharing about this person is sharing the story their whole life, that they've always been that person that's kind of hoped for the best but always expected the worst.
Yeah.
And lived their life that way. Sort of did the backup plans on backup plans for if this should go wrong, or if this should go wrong, or if this were to happen, then I have these solutions, right? Like that type of person, but always hopeful that it would actually go better, right? So this person was sharing the story about this, and one day this person was traveling. It was a male, and with their wife, they got in a car accident, and the wife died in the car accident. And reflecting on that, he had said, my shame, sort of that being hard on myself, of trying to get everything right, took me away from the time that I actually got to spend with my wife, and now she's gone. Because all I did was worry about all the things that could go wrong, and I never really truly enjoyed
the moment.
The time while I was with.
I'll say one thing, we did enjoy each other. We
For
did
sure.
enjoy the moment. There were some ridiculous times when I can say that we were belly laughing, right in the middle of the chemo clinic.
Right.
This isn't the place to laugh this hard, but it's something funny just happened. We were so used to living on the edge of death. I mean, everyone is technically, if you put your hand over your throat, there's not much protection there.
Right.
Everyone was living right up against the edge of it, but she was in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So in the time between when you guys were hanging out and her passing, there weren't a lot of long time periods where she wasn't hospitalized.
Right.
And she would say something to me once we were together, and it was always scaring me, because she would be like, I eat every day now. I can't believe this. I eat every day. And I remember saying to her, Cal, what this fuck does that mean?
Right.
What does that mean? How can you say that? That's a horrible bar.
Yeah.
And and I'd think to myself, how bad was it? And she said to me, it was bad. You don't know how. I don't want to throw out numbers, because someone else might be that number right now, and I don't want them to feel oh, you're a fucking loser at rock bottom. But
that's right.
She was like, it's been way worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's been way, way worse.
And then also people who, if they struggle with eating disordered stuff, behaviors, whatever, addiction issues, hearing that, they'll want to know, right? What was the number? Or they'll try and figure it out, or,
someone else's freak show.
I want to make mine. I want to make mine harder. I want to make. We call them We call them war stories.
They want to have the worst one.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think anyone's ever gonna. Yeah, I don't want to put something out there for someone to top. The worst war story I ever heard was someone who woke up with a toe tag on. Who was a drug addict.
Yeah.
Now, if you wake up in the morgue, that's you used up one of your 9 lives, Kat.
I can't even. Wow.
Woke up with a toe tag. If that doesn't make it real for you, you're fucking killing yourself. They thought
kidding.
you were dead.
Right. Wow. That's insane.
I'm like, yeah, I'll probably cut that out because I don't want someone else to aim for that. These aren't goals.
Yeah, you can just preface it with that. These aren't goals.
These are not life goals.
No, we're talking. This is, we're having conversation here, but that does not mean that we're trying to minimize it in any way.
No, I live with this every day.
Yeah.
So if I make light of something, it's gallows humor.
Right.
That's how I'm dealing with
Exactly.
it in the moment. And that shit is real.
That's
if you've
right.
helped someone all the way to the end, there's some weird jokes that happen.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't have a sense of humor about stuff like that when you're in that place,
Yeah.
I don't even know how you would handle. I mean, I don't even know.
Just break down,
Yeah. Right.
But then who goes and walks the person to the bathroom if you're breaking down and bawling in the corner?
Exactly.
So you have to lose your mind to keep it.
That's right.
I'm not saying I was some outstanding caretaker. I did okay. I was a horrible nurse. I don't like blood. I actually don't.
Me neither.
I don't
Can't
like
do
blood.
it.
I don't like any of this
Right.
stuff for the hours I've spent in the hospital.
Right.
I don't like any. If it's her body, it's not gross. So going back to, I'm interested for people who care about someone who's dealing with PTSD, really something severe, and they could be in a flashback at any given moment. I remember looking in her eyes or looking at her eyes, and you can see this person reaching for reality. And
Yeah.
I'm using my voice, Kel, it's me, can you hear me, do you know who I am? As a friend, when you were in those situations, what did you do, and what do you suggest for people who help people through flashbacks regularly?
No judgment, for one. Don't put any sort of judgment on it, like if that was a rough one or if that was that seems like you came back from that one quicker, that sort of stuff. I feel like to each, and sitting with them, not even, necessarily even trying to pull them out of it. This is just my experience and my understanding and what this is just my opinion. There's a million of me or more. So I feel like what would help the best or like feel the most safe, because I've never experienced one, so I have no idea, right?
Okay.
But what I know from seeing that happen is that feeling safe after that happens is big. Being surrounded by, not in a strange location, let's say, or, just kind of knowing that you're okay, right? And so having a person just sit with you and maybe even like put their hand on you, or, like not like a massive hug or anything, but more of a like, hey, I'm here, and just kind of keeping your presence there helps them feel safe.
Right. Once they're back.
Right.
I learned not to, what did they say? Don't touch her while she's activated.
Right.
So what does activated mean? Can you help me explain that?
Like a disassociation.
Oh,
Sort of like you almost like, step out of yourself and you go somewhere else. Like fight, flight, freeze. Have you ever heard those terms before?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I figured you have. I just wanted to make sure.
No, I would have you explain it anyway, because I think of that with when people talk about cops and they say, get on the ground, and the person froze.
Yeah.
Well, like, you don't have to have a lot of psychological training to know that if you point a gun at someone and scream, they're going to freeze.
Right.
So screaming for them to move, to me, is very uneducated.
Right. Yes, exactly.
I'm not ripping on cops. I just think
no.
they need better training.
Right, for sure.
Sorry. So you were going to say something.
Yes. I'll get there again. Fight, flight, or freeze. So with trauma, and people who have experienced trauma, it appears as though, I'm not a researcher and I don't have facts, right? So I can't say that I know any of this for a fact. But it appears that they sort of lose the freeze response.
Really?
Or they lose the fight response. One of the two.
She wanted to run so badly.
Either way.
That's what she said. She wanted to run.
It's sort of like we lose one of the actual ways, like, perceived real actual like threat, like let's say a tiger walked through here right now, right? That would be a perceived threat. So the natural response your body would automatically go, okay, well, the best is to freeze or the best is to run. But if you think of like a cycle, right? When we can't, have you ever come across or seen a video about polar bears and how they would tag them? And it actually displays the trauma response in our bodies. Have you ever seen that?
No, but I've heard things about animals that they can shake it off. We were into some kind of book called literally like Taming the Tiger or something. Oh,
Yeah.
I'll say what it's called. I can't think of it, but it
Yeah.
was really helping validate a lot of what she felt. She was like, "Oh God, I'm not a loser. This is
Peter
real.
Levine.
This was yeah, Peter Levine.
Yeah.
Amazing book.
Yeah, right.
But I believe it made me a believer that the hard work is worth it.
For sure. So in that, it seems like we lose one of them, but that video is actually very insightful as to how, like, polar bears, if they weren't able to complete the trauma cycle, they would be vulnerable to their environment. So we, as humans, right, if we can't fight or we can't flee, we get this thing called freeze, okay? Whereas, like, let's say we're driving on an icy road and we slip or something, right? Like and our body tenses up. And let's say we even maybe got in an accident from it, right? And if we didn't, let's say, we get to work or wherever we're going and we say, oh my gosh, it was, holy shit, I almost got in an accident today or whatever. If we can't complete the cycle to get that freeze out of our body, then it sticks with us. It's in our body.
How do we complete it? Because she would have little dreams where she would be kicking her little feet, and I had read that something about running, like you just said, but I can't articulate it like you can. Something about running gets it out of your system. Like, what's going on?
If you complete the cycle, then you can get back to, it's almost like you get it out of your body, okay?
Absolutely.
Right, so like in this video of the polar bear, they tag him, right? They sedate him and they tag him, and then like the sedation is starting to wear off and the body will, this polar bear does this breathing pattern, right? And it sort of resets its system and then it's able to get up. Yeah, like it sort of depresses, like it slows down and then it goes back to normal and then the animal can finally like go, right? So with us, when we experience we can't, get out or we can't fight, we don't get to do that. If we get out or we fight, then we experience trauma, but we don't get stuck in freeze. Okay, so there's little T's and big T's, right? Have you ever heard those?
What do they mean?
Little traumas and big traumas.
No.
So little traumas can be like everyday, sort of like I was explaining the car accident thing, right? Like where it almost happened, but it didn't quite happen. Like our body immediately, pushes out the adrenaline or whatever it is that we need to either survive, right?
Yeah.
Like how many times are we encountered in our environment of needing to survive every day, right? So little T's, big T's, that sort of thing. I won't get too into that because we'll go down a rabbit hole that we'll never come out of. So, trauma gets stuck in our body. That's why EMDR works, right?
You're a believer?
Mm-hmm. So EMDR is one thing that works to kind of help us get that out of our body. Yoga is a thing that can help. They have trauma-releasing exercises that a person can do with their body that helps sort of get a lot of the deeper, there's different positions and things you can do that really I found have helped people. Somatic experiencing is another version.
Yeah, we were doing that too.
Yeah. Peter Levine has really shared with the world a lot of good insight about trauma and treating its effects.
Were people talking about it the way he did in that book before he came along, or is he a groundbreaker?
I felt like he was a groundbreaker.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I can tell you, Peter, if you're listening, Doctor. Levine,
yes.
I hope that anyone who's contributing to this field gets into this podcast, and I'm hoping to interview people of that level at some time here in the University of Wisconsin Student Union.
Exactly.
Get the music behind the mission. Hate Becoming by Kelly Nicole on iTunes and Spotify.
If you guys haven't checked out the merch table,
join the movement.
Buy the album.
Get your Kelly Nicole band merch and donate what you can at kellynicolefoundation.org.
Courage is from Amplified!